Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast, a good morning to those of you in the Western and Central time zones, and a good evening to those of you following from Europe and Israel. I happen to be with Major General Nadav Padan here in Israel, and we have the opportunity to have some very significant meetings with the leadership of the IDF and of the Ministry of Defense. Major General Nadav Padan, we have a number of questions to ask you, but before we get to those questions, we'd like to hear really any thoughts you have or anything you would like to share with us in terms of where things are going in the north, where they're going in the south, and just in general regarding the war.
So I'll move from the south to the north. When it comes to the south, we are in the last phase of the operation, the military part of it. So generally speaking, the IDF already destroyed the Hamas as terror organization, as terror military organization. And now we're struggling with small groups spread all over Gaza Strip. They are not well organized and not well occupied. And as you can see, it's very rare that we are facing a launch of rocket or mortar from Gaza. What we're facing in most cases are a group of 3 terrorists with snipers and RPG booby trap our forces when we're trying to clean up and destroy the lost facilities of the subterranean system. Prior to that, we'll continue with our effort to get to our hostages. We're still having 101 hostages in Gaza Strip. So I would say that 3 main efforts right now is to stabilize the operational situation in Gaza that will allow the IDF kind of freedom of operation and keep those track to clean the lost cells of terror, which is no longer, as I mentioned, a well-organized military of terror, but small group of terrorists. Then the second effort will be to get information and release our hostages by negotiate, by reaching to them operationally, and so on and so on. And the last effort will be to create substitute to the regime of the Hamas by cooperating with other and create some kind of moderate local leadership that could coordinate with us, speak to us, and block Hamas from taking over the Gaza Strip together. And between the line, you can hear the leadership of Hamas try to understand that they can no longer control the Gaza Strip and just try to create kind of agreement with Fatah and other movements that are more acceptable by the Israelis and have relations with them over the years in the area of Judea, Samaria. At the other proxies, the Houthis, the Shia militia in Iraq and Syria, were still facing weekly kind of launching of drones, and last week it was drones and cruise missiles that been launched from Yemen by the Houthis. Thank God we've been able to intercept 100% of those attempts from the east and from the south. When it comes to Lebanon, Israel, generally speaking, moving in 2 directions. One is diplomatic effort to try to convince the international community and the Lebanese leadership, including Hezbollah, not directly, but through third and fourth actors, to accept different kind of agreement. Different kind of agreement that we're trying to achieve is more or less the 1701 we knew from 2006 with another chapter that deal with our freedom of operation. It doesn't mean that we can do whatever we want in Lebanon, but we can do the effort that needed to be done to prevent Hezbollah from breaking the 1701 agreement by getting close to the border, by moving equipment and missiles and ammunition close to the borders of Israel. It seems that most of the actors have the motivation to sign this kind of agreement, and it's just a question of matureness and getting to the right direction. that with what we'll start hearing from the Iranian, that waiting for President Donald Trump to get into the White House and offer them different kind of business opportunity, if you will, if I use this language, or diplomatic opportunity. And there is like a second level leaders in Iran that released messages that they postponed their response to Israel, waiting for the a new team to get into the White House and see where it goes, which is also a signal that the system run by the Iranian are about a bit in shock and exhausted from trying to defeat Israel. They didn't succeed the last few weeks. When it comes to Hezbollah, from tactical perspective, the effort to eliminate and to kill the leadership, to take out the leadership of Hezbollah, are continuing. Every week we get to know about a new name, and we started with the lay leader in Beirut, Nasrallah and his team, and it's continued with the regional commander, with the brigade commander, battalion commander, the commander that's responsible for different kind of layers and professional corps in Hezbollah, like the anti-tank missile division, like the intelligence division, like the drone division, so far and so on. Last week, we eliminate Musa Salah and Ayman Nablasi, that I know them for years as great terrorists that we try to figure out where they are and fight them for the last, let's say, 20 years or 15 years. That's parallel to two other efforts. One is to destroy the main strategic storages of Hamas, located at Dahya neighborhood in Beirut, and at the Baka in Lebanon, close to the border between Lebanon and Syria. So that's effort continue. Again, today, the Arabic speaker of the spokesperson of the IDF asked another two buildings to be evacuated, be ready to reduce the amount of collateral damage and attack another two storages. In most cases, the matter is that Hezbollah used the basement, the second floor under the ground, under main buildings in Beirut, mostly the Dahya area, and they're using their own people as human shield. So what the phenomena of the last several weeks is that the IDF spokesperson asked them to evacuate. They move out. They follow the order or the request of the IDF spokesperson, and then there is attack of the Air Force that's trying to smuggle out the ammunition as soon as they can. In most cases, it's too big, too complicated logistically, and they've been able so far to smuggle here and there small percentage of those storages, and the IDF have huge successes with destroying strategic asset of Hezbollah. On the ground, Israel starting to accelerate the maneuver, meaning moving north to the lines that we already achieved, and by that keeping the momentum, keeping the pressure, and creating, I would say, better condition to get to the result we want at the negotiation to a ceasefire agreement with the Lebanese. So if I have to wrap it up, the last few weeks, Israel tactically have amazing successes, and at the north, as far as I can judge things are moving forward, coming closer and closer to the situation that the Lebanese, with the permission of Hezbollah, will accept ceasefire agreement, close to 1701, with the support of the Iranian that's under pressure, but because of what have happened during the last few months, because of the direct attack of Israel, and because of the change of the government of the US. And when it comes to the situation in the south, we're still struggling with quite complicated situation, basically and mainly because of our 101 hostages.
So if we could review what you're saying and then maybe ask a question or two. In Lebanon, because they have what to lose, there's a real possibility that there will be some form of a ceasefire. Right now, because Israel's, the term you use is they have the momentum. They're continuously taking away the stockpiles of whether it's of drones, whether it's mortars, whether it's bombs from the Dachia neighborhood, from the Bekaa Valley. So there probably very well could be a ceasefire coming up in the next month. And then also, of course, there's the fear that they may have of a Trump administration being even more supportive than the Biden administration, which puts them in a worse situation. And what you're saying is when it comes to Hamas, because they've been dismantled, there's not a whole lot of infrastructure there. Who do you make a deal with? We don't even know who to make the deal with. They're tired, they're weary, they're worn out because they've, as you said, they're down to small little terrorist groups. There's going to come a point where they don't even control the stealing of humanitarian aid that they've been stealing for the last 7-8 months. That's being taken away from them. So they really have nothing to lose because they have nothing. That's going to be much more difficult in terms of being able to have an agreement which gets the hostages liberated from Hamas control. There's what you're doing is you're contrasting the opportunity for an agreement in Lebanon versus the challenge of getting one in Gaza. Is that correct?
It is correct. And it gets to the point that the only life policy, if you will, of Hamas is the hostages. So no matter what's going to be the situation in Gaza, I mean, the situation in Gaza is quite tough. I mean, the people that live there are miserable, living in refugee camp. Most of them lost a significant part of their property and their hope. So I'm not trying to say that because we're sending drugs and food and water to the people, everything is fine. It's not fine. They're suffering. But although they're suffering, the only way to make sure that they stay alive, they keep the head over the water, is the hostages that they're holding. So, I mean, there is two different kind of perceptions in the Israel leadership. There is ones that think that at the end they're going to split and we'll be able to do those negotiations to release the hostages separately with a small group. And there is another perspective that said that it's won't get to this situation because the idea of the Muslim Brotherhood, the Hamas, and the pressure that comes from all the system of the Iranian and others, Muslim Brotherhood movement in Egypt, in Turkey, and other places, will force them to have like a one deal, and nobody will dare to break the commitment that created the religious commitment and the movement commitment inside Gaza. And if I have to speak about my thought, I closer to the second one. I think that at the end of the day, we'll have to negotiate with some kind of leadership of Hamas and do whatever we can to release the biggest amounts of hostages that can be released. First of all, the one that's still alive, and then the bodies of the other that we are obligated to bring to a religious Jewish burial in Israel. That's going to be quite tough. And tough means that to negotiate with someone, you have to give them something. And this something could be a ceasefire that will, in a way, promise their existence and life as a movement and as a persons. And second, we'll have probably to release hundreds of terrorists from our captivity, from our jails. And that's a huge price. Just to remind ourselves that when we released Gilad Shalit, the soldier that had been held by Hamas, we released 1,000 terrorists. And some of them were the leaders of the October 7th strike, the devil itself. So, I mean, it's going to be quite tough. And the translation of this toughness is that we probably going to keep fighting those radical terror group in Gaza. I'm not saying that we'll have another October 7 every year, every second year, every 5 years. The idea is that we'll have to keep fighting the radical Muslim Brotherhood movement in Gaza Strip. We'll still be forced to fight and deal with terror cell inside the city of Gaza and Rafah and other places, like we're dealing with them in Judea and Samaria.
You said that from day one. You said that this is a situation where, if we're successful, which Israel has been incredibly successful, you're still looking at years, maybe generations of fighting terrorism. And you use the analogy of what happened after you were given the green light from Ariel Sharon to go in to clean up the mess. And what was that, in 2003, 2004, something like that?
Yeah.
And then it still took 4 or 5 years just to have control. I remember you said that from day one. You said that was what would happen, and we've seen that.
Yeah, and it's not definitely say that everybody gonna read about it in the news. I mean, before the war, nobody knew in the U.S. or in Europe that Israel launching operation after operation, sometimes 20, 30 operation per night, which were surgical pinpoint operation. They didn't, unstabilize the whole Judean Samaria area. We just get into the right neighborhood, took the terrorist out of the neighborhood and get out without making noise. The neighborhood and the whole city wake up the other morning, send their kids to school, go to work, and everything went normal. So it doesn't mean that Gaza Strip will be covered with smoke of war for the next several years. It could be a very accurate, meticulously picking surgical operation that will run day after day, night after night, that will allow the stability and the hope, not only for us and not only for the security of our border and the prosperity of the villages and the kibbutzim that lives at the Gaza envelope, which is our first goal, but also for the Palestinian themselves. They'll have hope, they'll have stability, they'll have the opportunity to send the kids to school instead of looking for water at the refugee camp right now in Gaza Strip. So I think it's a win-win. Yeah, and again, I'm don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to convince that the Zionism gonna be the leading movement in Gaza Strip. They're not. They're gonna fight us. They're gonna hate us. They're gonna wanna have their own independency, but the win-win opportunity to have some kind of stability and agreement gonna be the leading concept that could mark the future for both of the population. That's what happened, by the way, in Judea and Samaria. That's what happened in Judea and Samaria. The people in Judea and Samaria cooperate with us, prevent terrorists from filtrate into their neighborhoods because they want stability. They want to create life. They want quality of life. And as long as you're not mislead yourself and think that you can buy freedom or you can buy the love and the heart and the mind of the people of the Palestinian authorities, you're good. You know that in one hand, you'll have to fight the terror group, and in the other end, you can set some kind of platform that will allow these two people to live shoulder to shoulder, not as close friends like in Europe or in other Western areas, but around two people that hate each other, but willing to hold themselves because they want to live and they want quality of life.
One last question for you. There's an idea that's been floated that you could have really in Gaza different districts or zones. Maybe one would be overseen by the Emiratis, one by the Saudis, one by America, in terms of the civil administration. Is there any substance to that? Is that even a possibility?
So I mean, you can describe the Palestinian population from many perspectives. You can describe it from the perspective of the tribes and the families tribe and the circles of identity. To be honest, it's one of the layer. I cannot see it happen in the near future for many reasons. The main reason here is I cannot see all the moderate countries that you mentioned, like the Emirates, the Persian Gulf country, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and other, adopting part of Gaza Strip in the way that you offer. We'll be able to convince some of them to become part of coalition that help the Palestinian people to rebuild themselves, to recover from this very aggressive period of time and the war that they actually initiated and created. But at the end of the day, we will be able to deal with Palestinian as one region, and we'll be able to we will be forced to be the one that's responsible for Gaza Strip. The interest of all the moderate country will be to help us to be nice to the Palestinian without taking the responsibility from the shoulder of the Israelis, as far as I understand it. But it's a process. You have to start somewhere. You start with building hospitals and school and continue with neighborhoods, and then God knows when it's going to lead us with the right direction over the next 20 years. So I'm not losing hope.
Yeah. The point is, this is a multi-year process.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, from any reason, just from the perspective that we'll have to be mentally prepared to accept those kind of idea, to prepare the population, both sides. It takes time, and we are ready for a long journey. Not to keep with this kind of level of fight, but with the same level of fight that we described and mentioned before this brief.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of last points. We know that it's towards the end of the year. People are thinking about in terms of their charitable donations. Just to give everyone an update, and we are very grateful because those who are watching these briefings have been very generous over the course of the last 13 months. We've committed $246 million to the war effort. And as you know, that emergency campaign, that war campaign, there is no overhead. At this point, so far, we've collected about 170 million, about 169, 170 million. We're looking again to collect and to fulfill the commitments to the tune of about 65 million more dollars. And there are some very, very particular needs that we have. One of them we mentioned is if anyone wants to be, and you will actually, so to speak, adopt, you'll be the one who's funded the training of a psychologist or a social worker for $20,000 and the mentoring and management of that social worker or psychologist to deal with the PTSD. And I think, if I'm correct, Major General Padan, that the term you used was right now, 3,300 soldiers have received, therapy. And because there was early therapy, 85% of them are actually back with their units, back in active duty with their units. Is that correct? Were those the numbers you gave?
Yeah, if they were active duty, they went back to the units, or if they were reservists, in some cases, they went back to life, to the university study or to work or whatever. But they were back to track of life.
So we've already funded over 300 psychologists and social workers who did not have a background in this, being trained by the people at Sheba, Dr. Mickey Pollack and his team, and being managed. And most of them are going to be dealing with the soldiers, but some of them as well will be dealing with PTSD in the civilian population. That's one area. As we mention each and every week, we still have about 80 scholarships, about 80 soldiers who fought in this war, who come from a family that's either in poverty or low middle class, that we would be funding. You'd be funding their full education plus spending money. It's $5,000 a year over 4 years. That's a $20,000 commitment over 4 years, 5 a year. and you will have a personal relationship with that student, the former combat soldier. That's one area that we're still looking for. And there are a number of other areas as well. One of the areas is to fund a retreat to Cyprus, to take what they say microdemographics, meaning widows in their 30s and 20s, Druze families who buried a son, different units where they can create a network. These are all bereaved families of this war. They go away for a 5-day retreat with therapists, with therapy sessions, But the goal of this, the long-term goal, is to create a network, to create people who they can really open up to, feel that truly are understood, and have lifelong relationships to deal with the kind of issues that they're dealing with. People are going through the exact same phenomena, the exact same tragedy, I should say. There's another area of bereaved families that's called the Legacy Program. This coming summer, like this past summer, we'll be bringing six groups of orphans and younger siblings, either someone who's lost a father or mother or someone who's lost an older brother or sister at war. All of them are either orphans or younger siblings, what's in Hebrew known as Ach Shakul, of this war. These programs are exceedingly powerful. They spend a number of weeks here in America. One of them will be taking place. We don't want it for the sake of the security, but we're not going to give specific locations. One of them will be in the Midwest, 2 of them in the Atlantic seaboard, and 3 of them will be up and down the East Coast. You know, the 3 younger programs are for bar and bat mitzvah aged orphans and younger siblings, and the 3 high school aged are like a traveling type of camp. They're real special sponsorship opportunities to actually meet the kids. One of these will be taking place in the spring, 5 of them this coming summer. And these are just a few of the programs that we've yet to fund, and we're looking for support. If that's something that, you know, if you would see to it in terms of the goodness of your heart that you might have an interest in this, you can reach out, steve.weil, steve.weil at FIDF.org. And we want to thank you. Thank you for participating in the briefings. We want to thank Major General Padan, who's had really a very, very busy last 2 weeks. Not only has he led missions here in Israel, but he has been working with the general staff, working with the Ministry of Defense. And we want to thank Major General Padan, not only for taking the time to address us, but also for the leadership on those fronts. Wishing everyone a good week.